The sound of breaking glass shattered the humid Texas afternoon, and Clara Jenkins threw herself behind the overturned wagon as 3 more shots rang out across the dusty main street of White Pine. Blood soaked through her worn cotton dress, where the splinter from the shattered storefront had torn across her shoulder, and she pressed her hand against the wound while trying to steady her ragged breathing. This was not how she had imagined her first day as the new schoolteacher would unfold, but the bank robbery happening 50 yards away had turned the quiet settlement into chaos. And now she was trapped between the mercantile and the saloon with bullets flying overhead. She had arrived on the morning stage from Houston, her carpet bag containing everything she owned in the world: 3 dresses, a daguerreotype of her late mother, and the teaching certificate that represented 2 years of scrimping and saving to attend the Teachers Academy in San Antonio. At 22 years old, Clara had finally secured a position that would give her independence and purpose, away from the pitying looks of her aunt's neighbors who whispered about the plain girl with the scarred face who would never find a husband. The scar ran from her left temple down to her jaw, a memento from a cooking fire that had swept through her childhood home when she was 9, taking her mother and leaving Clara permanently marked. She had learned early that beauty was not her destiny, so she had pursued knowledge instead, throwing herself into books and learning with a fierce determination that impressed her teachers, even as it isolated her from other young women her age. Now, crouched behind the wagon in 1878 White Pine, Texas, Clara wondered if she would live long enough to teach her first lesson. Another bullet splintered the wagon wheel inches from her head, and she made herself as small as possible, her heart hammering against her ribs. Then she heard hoofbeats, fast and rhythmic, coming from the east end of town. Through the gap between the wagon and the boardwalk, she caught sight of a rider on a paint horse, moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost unhurried despite his speed. The man wore dusty trail clothes and a dark hat pulled low, and he had his rifle drawn as he approached the chaos. The rider dismounted in one smooth motion, taking cover behind a water trough. Clara watched as he assessed the situation with the calm efficiency of someone accustomed to danger. He was tall, she could tell even from his crouched position, with broad shoulders and the lean build of a man who spent his life in the saddle. When he turned slightly, she caught a glimpse of his profile: strong jaw, straight nose, and an expression of focused concentration. One of the bank robbers emerged from the building, a sack of money in one hand and a pistol in the other. He fired wildly down the street, and Clara flinched as another shot struck near her hiding place. The man by the water trough moved then, faster than she could track, and his rifle cracked once. The robber dropped his gun and clutched his shoulder, the money sack falling into the dirt. "Give it up," the rider called out, his voice carrying easily across the street despite its measured tone. "Town's got you surrounded. No need for anyone else to get hurt." It was a bluff, Clara realized. The town marshal was reportedly 3 days north chasing cattle rustlers, and most of White Pine's citizens had either taken cover or fled when the shooting started. But the rider spoke with such authority that even she almost believed help was coming. For a moment, silence fell over the street. Then 2 more robbers burst from the bank, guns blazing. The rider rolled behind a support post for the hardware store's awning, came up shooting, and fired twice more. One of the robbers went down clutching his leg, and the other dove back inside the bank. The wounded man from before struggled to his feet and limped toward a horse tied at the hitching rail. Clara saw it before the rider did. A 4th robber, one she had not noticed, emerged from the alley between the saloon and the land office. He had a clear shot at the rider's back, and he was raising his pistol with deliberate aim. "Behind you," Clara shouted, her voice cracking with urgency. The rider spun, impossibly fast, and his rifle spoke again. The fourth robber's shot went wide, shattering another window, and the man crumpled to the ground, clutching his gun arm. In the sudden stillness that followed, Clara heard the remaining robbers inside the bank shouting to each other. Then came the sound of the back door slamming open and horses galloping away toward the creek. The rider stayed motionless for a long moment, listening. When no more shots came, he slowly stood, keeping his rifle ready. He checked each of the wounded robbers, kicking their weapons out of reach and calling for someone to fetch rope and the doctor. Then his eyes scanned the street and found Clara still huddled behind the wagon. He walked toward her with long, measured strides, and as he drew closer, Clara found herself staring up at a face that was both rugged and remarkably handsome. He had green eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, weather-worn skin that spoke of years under the sun, and a mouth set in a serious line. When he crouched beside her, she noticed the concern that softened his expression. "Are you hurt, miss?" he asked, and his voice was gentler now, though no less assured. "My shoulder," Clara managed, suddenly very aware of the blood on her dress and the way his gaze tracked to the wound. "It is just a splinter, I think. Nothing serious. Let me see." He set his rifle aside carefully and reached toward her, then paused. "May I?" She nodded, too shaken to protest, and moved her hand away from the wound. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as he examined her shoulder, and she tried not to wince. "You are right, it is not deep, but it needs cleaning and bandaging," he said. "Can you stand?" "I believe so." She accepted his offered hand, and he helped her to her feet with a steadying grip. Her legs felt unsteady beneath her, whether from fear or blood loss or something else entirely. She could not say. Up close, he was even taller than she had thought, and there was a quiet strength about him that made her feel safer despite the lingering smoke and shouting around them. Other townspeople were beginning to emerge now, and she heard someone calling for Dr. Morrison. "I am Vincent Edwards," he said, still holding her arm lightly as if afraid she might fall. "I was riding through when I heard the shooting. Clara Jenkins." She tried to smile, though her face felt stiff with shock. "The new schoolteacher. At least I was meant to be. I only arrived this morning." Something flickered in his green eyes, might have been amusement or sympathy, she could not tell. Some welcome to White Pine. "Come on, let us get you to the doctor." He retrieved his rifle and guided her down the street, and Clara found herself leaning on him more than she intended. The adrenaline that had kept her sharp during the shooting was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Vincent kept pace with her halting steps, his hand steady on her uninjured arm. Dr. Morrison's office was above the apothecary, and by the time they climbed the stairs, Clara's head was spinning. The doctor, a round man with spectacles and kind eyes, took one look at her and pointed Vincent toward an examining table. "Set her down there, Vince." "Good Lord, what happened to this young lady?" "Got caught in the crossfire during the robbery," Vincent explained, helping Clara onto the table. "Took a splinter to the shoulder." Let me see." Dr. Morrison shooed Vincent back a step and began examining Clara's wound with practiced efficiency. "Not too bad, but it will need stitches. You are very lucky, miss." "Thank you, doctor." Clara closed her eyes as he began cleaning the wound, trying not to gasp at the sting of whatever antiseptic he was using. When she opened her eyes again, Vincent was standing by the window, looking out at the street below. He had removed his hat, revealing dark brown hair that needed cutting, and in profile his face had an almost austere quality, all strong lines and sharp angles. But then he glanced back at her, and the concern in his expression gentled his features. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "That man in the alley had me dead to rights. I owe you." Clara felt heat rise to her face that had nothing to do with pain. "You saved the whole town. I only called out a warning that made all the difference." He came closer, leaning against the wall near the examining table. Most people would have stayed hidden. That took courage. She did not know what to say to that. Courage was not a quality she had ever associated with herself. Stubborn, yes. Practical, certainly. But courageous seemed too grand a word for simply shouting when she saw danger. Dr. Morrison worked in silence for a few minutes, his needle moving with steady precision. Clara bit her lip and tried to focus on something other than the tugging sensation in her shoulder. She found herself watching Vincent instead, noting the way he seemed completely at ease despite having just been in a gunfight, the casual competence with which he had handled the situation. "Are you a lawman?" she asked, needing to break the silence. He shook his head. "Ranch hand mostly. I work on spreads from here to the Panhandle, wherever needs an extra hand. Was heading north to a job when I passed through." Oh, she felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. So he was just passing through, not staying. Why that should matter, she could not say. "All done," Dr. Morrison announced, tying off the last stitch and covering the wound with clean bandages. "Keep this dry and clean. Come see me in a week to have the stitches removed, and take it easy for a few days, young lady. No heavy lifting." "Thank you, doctor." Clara slid off the table carefully, testing her shoulder. It throbbed, but the sharp pain had subsided to a dull ache. "No charge for today," the doctor added, washing his hands in the basin. "Consider it my contribution to thanking you both for what you did out there. Town would have lost a lot more than money if those robbers had kept shooting." Vincent nodded his acknowledgement and offered Clara his arm. "Let me walk you to wherever you are staying. The boarding house, I think. Mrs. Whitmore's place. That was where the town council said I should go when I arrived." They descended the stairs slowly, and Clara was grateful for Vincent's steadying presence. The street outside was crowded now, with people cleaning up the mess from the robbery. Broken glass glittered in the afternoon sun, and someone was already replacing the shattered bank window. The wounded robbers had been hauled off to the small jail at the edge of town, and clusters of citizens stood talking in animated voices about what had happened. Several people called out thanks to Vincent as they passed, and he acknowledged each with a polite nod but did not stop. Clara noticed how he kept himself between her and the crowd, as if still protecting her from potential danger. It was such an instinctive gesture that she doubted he was even aware of doing it. Mrs. Whitmore's boarding house stood at the north end of town, a two-story structure with a wide porch and cheerful yellow shutters. The proprietor herself, a sturdy woman in her 50s with iron gray hair and sharp blue eyes, stood on the porch watching their approach. "Miss Jenkins, I presume," she called out. "I saw the commotion from here. Are you all right?" "A little worse for wear, but yes, I am fine, Mrs. Whitmore." Clara felt Vincent's hand tighten slightly on her arm as they climbed the porch steps. Mrs. Whitmore's gaze shifted to Vincent and her expression warmed. "Vincent Edwards, I heard you were the one who stopped those robbers. Good work, son. Just happened to be in the right place, madam." He touched the brim of his hat respectfully. "I wanted to make sure Miss Jenkins got here safely. She took a wound during the shooting. Come inside, both of you." Mrs. Whitmore held the door open, ushering them into a neat hallway that smelled of beeswax and fresh bread. "Miss Jenkins, your room is upstairs, first door on the right. Your bag is already up there. I will bring hot water for washing, and you should rest." "Thank you." Clara reluctantly released Vincent's arm, suddenly uncertain. She should go upstairs and rest as Mrs. Whitmore suggested, but the thought of Vincent leaving, of not seeing him again, left her feeling oddly hollow. Vincent seemed to sense her hesitation. I will check on you tomorrow if that is all right. Make sure you are healing properly. I would like that." The words came out more earnestly than she intended, and she saw something flicker in his green eyes. "Tomorrow, then." He nodded to both women and turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Welcome to White Pine, Miss Jenkins. I hope the rest of your time here is less eventful." After he left, Mrs. Whitmore guided Clara upstairs with a knowing look that made Clara's cheeks burn. "That is a good man, Vincent Edwards. Steady and reliable, even if he does spend most of his time on the trail. Now, let us get you settled." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed covered in a patchwork quilt, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. Clara's carpetbag sat on a chair in the corner, looking shabby and worn in the tidy space. She sank onto the bed with a sigh, her shoulder throbbing in time with her heartbeat. Mrs. Whitmore returned with a pitcher of hot water and clean towels. "I will bring supper to your room tonight. You need rest more than anything. The school opening can wait a day or two while you recover." "You are very kind," Clara meant it. She had grown accustomed to cool tolerance rather than active kindness, especially from women who seemed to find her scar unsettling. "Nonsense. You had a terrible shock today." Mrs. Whitmore set the pitcher on the washstand. "And for what it is worth, Vincent does not check on just anyone. You made an impression." After the landlady left, Clara washed as best she could with one arm and changed into a clean dress. Her shoulder ached, and she felt bruised all over from crouching behind the wagon, but underneath, the physical discomfort was a strange flutter of anticipation. Vincent would come tomorrow. She would see him again. She caught sight of herself in the small mirror above the washstand and grimaced. The scar stood out livid against her pale skin, and her brown hair had come loose from its pins during the chaos, hanging in limp strands around her face. Her eyes, an unremarkable hazel, looked too large in her thin face, and her mouth was too wide for beauty. Not for the first time, she thought how different her life might have been if she had inherited her mother's delicate features, instead of her father's angular plainness, combined with the disfiguring scar. She turned away from the mirror and lay down carefully on the bed. Through the window, she could hear the sounds of White Pine settling into evening, voices calling good night, the clip-clop of horses, the distant bark of a dog. Somewhere out there, Vincent Edwards was probably settling his own horse for the night, maybe finding a place to sleep before continuing his journey north. Except he had said he would check on her tomorrow. That had to mean he was staying at least one more day. The thought made her smile despite her exhaustion, and she drifted into sleep with his green eyes still vivid in her memory. The next morning brought brilliant sunshine, and the realization that Clara's shoulder hurt significantly more than it had the previous day. She managed to dress herself with difficulty, choosing her least worn dress, a dark blue cotton that did not require as many fastenings as her others. Her reflection showed her looking pale and tired, but she pinned her hair up carefully, arranging it to partially obscure her scar as she always did. Mrs. Whitmore had breakfast ready downstairs, and Clara forced herself to eat despite her nervous stomach. The boarding house had 3 other residents, all men who worked at the lumber mill on the edge of town, and they ate quickly and quietly before heading off to work. Clara helped Mrs. Whitmore clear the table, ignoring the landlady's protests that she should rest. "If I sit still too long, I will only think about how much my shoulder hurts," Clara explained, carefully drying dishes with her good arm. "Besides, I need to meet with the school board and see the schoolhouse. I cannot put off my duties indefinitely." "At least wait until this afternoon," Mrs. Whitmore urged. "Give yourself one full day to recover, and did not Vincent say he would check on you today?" As if summoned by his name, a knock came at the front door. Mrs. Whitmore opened it to reveal Vincent standing on the porch, hat in hand. He had shaved since yesterday, Clara noticed, and his hair was slightly damp as if he had just washed. He wore clean trail clothes and that same serious expression that made him look older than what she guessed was his mid-20s. "Good morning, madam," he said to Mrs. Whitmore. "Is Miss Jenkins receiving visitors?" "Come in, Vincent. She is just in the kitchen, Mrs." Whitmore stepped aside and Vincent entered, his gaze finding Clara immediately. "How is your shoulder this morning?" he asked, crossing the room toward her. "Sore, but healing, I think." Clara set down the dish towel, acutely aware of how domestic and plain she must look standing in the kitchen. "Thank you for coming to check on me. I said I would." He glanced at Mrs. Whitmore, then back at Clara. "I wondered if you might like to see the schoolhouse today. I spoke with Reverend Thompson this morning, and he is on the school board. He said you were expected to meet with them anyway, and I thought you might want someone to show you the way." Clara's heart lifted. "I would like that very much." Mrs. Whitmore made a small approving sound. "What a thoughtful offer, Vincent. Miss Jenkins, take your shawl. The wind has picked up." Outside, the morning had indeed turned breezy, and Clara was glad for her shawl as they walked down the main street. Vincent matched his long stride to her shorter one, his hands clasped behind his back in a way that seemed almost formal. "How long have you been a teacher?" he asked as they passed the general store. "This will be my first position, actually. I completed my certificate last year but spent the time since caring for my aunt who was ill. She passed 3 months ago, and I began looking for work immediately." Clara pulled her shawl closer. "White Pine was the first town to offer me a position. Their gain," Vincent's voice was quiet but sincere, "takes a special kind of person to dedicate themselves to teaching. My mother was a teacher before she married. She always said it was the most important work anyone could do." "Was." Clara caught the past tense. "She passed when I was 14. Fever." Vincent's expression remained neutral, but Clara heard the old grief beneath the words. "My father followed her 2 years later, lost the will to keep going, I think. I am sorry." Clara knew that platitude was inadequate, but what else could she say? She understood loss, understood the way it could hollow a person out. They walked in companionable silence for a moment, and Clara found herself studying Vincent's profile again. In daylight, she could see the small scar above his left eyebrow, the weathered texture of his skin, the way his jaw tensed slightly when he was thinking. He was handsome, undeniably so, but there was something more to him than just his looks. A steadiness, a quiet competence that made her feel safe. The schoolhouse stood at the west edge of town, a modest building with whitewashed walls and a small bell tower. A handful of cottonwood trees provided shade for the yard, and someone had built simple benches under their spreading branches. Vincent opened the door and held it for Clara, and she stepped into the cool dimness inside. The single room was larger than she had expected, with rows of desks facing a blackboard at the front, windows on both sides to provide light, and a wood stove in the corner for winter heating. It was clean and well-maintained, and Clara felt a surge of excitement. This would be her classroom, her domain. Here she could make a difference. "It is perfect," she said softly, walking between the desks. "How many students are enrolled?" Reverend Thompson said about 20, ranging from 6 to 14 years old. Vincent leaned against the doorframe, watching her explore. Most of the older children only come during winter when farm work slows down. The younger ones attend year-round. Clara reached the front of the room and ran her hand along the blackboard tray. Someone had left chalk and an eraser ready for her use. On the desk sat a worn Bible, likely used for reading lessons, and a small stack of primers. Not much, but it was a start. She could requisition more books once she proved herself. "You look happy," Vincent observed, and there was something warm in his voice that made Clara turn to face him. "I am happy. This is everything I have worked toward." She gestured at the room. "I know it probably seems silly to you, getting excited about a small schoolhouse in a frontier town. But to me, this represents possibility. I can teach these children to read and write, to understand mathematics and history. I can give them tools to build better lives." "Does not seem silly at all." Vincent pushed away from the door frame and walked toward her. "My mother used to say the same thing. She believed education was the great equalizer, that it could lift people out of poverty and ignorance. I always admired that passion in her." He stopped a few feet away, and Clara found herself caught by his gaze. The green of his eyes seemed brighter in the dim schoolhouse, and there was an intensity to his expression that made her breath catch. "You remind me of her," he continued quietly. "That same dedication and fire underneath the gentle exterior. It is a rare quality." Clara looked down, uncomfortable with the compliment. "You barely know me. I could be terrible at teaching." "Maybe, but I do not think so." Vincent tilted his head slightly. "You ran toward danger yesterday to warn a stranger. That takes courage and selflessness. Those are the same qualities that make a good teacher." Before Clara could respond, footsteps sounded on the path outside, and Reverend Thompson appeared in the doorway. He was a thin man with graying hair and the slightly stooped posture of someone who spent too much time bent over books. "Ah, Miss Jenkins, I see Vincent found you." The Reverend came forward with an outstretched hand. "Welcome to White Pine. I apologize that your arrival was so eventful. We are usually a much quieter town." "Thank you, Reverend. The schoolhouse is wonderful." Clara shook his hand, grateful for the interruption even as she felt oddly disappointed that her moment with Vincent had been cut short. "I am glad you think so. Now, let me show you the supply cupboard and the bell schedule, and we can discuss your curriculum." Reverend Thompson gestured toward the back of the room. "Vincent, will you be staying in town long? The school board wanted to formally thank you for your actions yesterday." Vincent shifted uncomfortably. "That is not necessary, Reverend. I was just doing what anyone would do, and I was planning to head north tomorrow or the next day. Got a job waiting up in the Panhandle. Tomorrow or the next day." The words hit Clara harder than she expected. Of course he was leaving. He had said as much yesterday. He was a ranch hand, a drifter who went where the work took him. There was no reason for him to stay in White Pine. No reason except her, and why would that be reason enough? He was being kind because she was new in town and had been hurt. That was all. She was foolish to read anything more into his attention. "Well, before you go, you should at least let the town buy you dinner," Reverend Thompson insisted. "Mrs. Chen at the restaurant makes an excellent roast. Tonight, perhaps." Vincent hesitated and Clara could not help herself. "You should accept, Mr. Edwards. The town owes you a debt of gratitude." His eyes met hers, searching. "Only if you join us, Miss Jenkins. Seems to me you are as much a hero as I am." "I hardly think calling out one warning compares to stopping 4 armed robbers." "I disagree." Vincent's voice was firm. "Will you come to dinner tonight?" With both men looking at her expectantly, Clara could only nod. "All right, thank you." Reverend Thompson beamed. "Wonderful, I will arrange everything. Shall we say 6 o'clock at Mrs. Chen's restaurant? I will gather a few other board members and community leaders. Nothing too formal, just a thank you." After the Reverend explained the school's routines and left Clara with an armful of textbooks to review, Vincent walked her back to the boarding house. The wind had strengthened, carrying the scent of distant rain, and storm clouds gathered on the horizon. "Looks like weather coming in," Vincent observed, scanning the sky. "Good for the ranchers. They have been needing rain. How long have you been working on ranches?" Clara asked, curious about this quiet man who had appeared in her life so suddenly. Since I was 16, after my father died. Worked on our family ranch until we lost it to debt, then hired on wherever I could find work. Vincent's voice was matter-of-fact, without self-pity. Learned pretty quickly that I had a way with horses and cattle. Been moving from job to job ever since. Do you ever want to settle down, have your own place again? Sometimes. He was quiet for a moment, considering. But ranching requires capital I do not have, and settling down requires something else I have not found. What is that? Vincent looked at her then, and something in his expression made her heart race. A reason to stay in one place. They reached the boarding house before Clara could think of a response. Vincent tipped his hat to her at the porch steps, promised to collect her for dinner at 5:45, and strode away toward the livery stable where he had apparently been sleeping near his horse. Clara watched him go, confusion and hope warring in her chest. Was he implying what she thought he was implying? Or was she reading too much into a simple statement? She had so little experience with men, with courtship, with anything beyond her books and studies. How was she supposed to interpret the way he looked at her, the warmth in his voice, the care he showed? Mrs. Whitmore was waiting inside with a knowing smile. "Dinner tonight, is it?" With Reverend Thompson and several others, Clara added quickly. "It is a town function, not a private dinner." "If you say so, dear." Mrs. Whitmore's eyes twinkled. "Though I imagine Vincent would have preferred it to be private. That man has been completely besotted since he carried you to the doctor yesterday." "Besotted?" Clara shook her head. "You are mistaken, Mrs. Whitmore. He is simply being kind to someone new in town. I have known Vincent Edwards for 3 years, since he first started passing through White Pine. Never once seen him pay special attention to anyone. Until you." Mrs. Whitmore patted Clara's good shoulder gently. "Now, let us pick out something nice for you to wear tonight. First impressions are important." Clara let herself be led upstairs, trying to suppress the flutter of hope in her chest. She pulled out her 3 dresses, examining each one critically. The dark blue she had worn that morning was now her everyday dress. The brown wool was too heavy for the warm weather. That left only the gray cotton with small white flowers embroidered on the collar, her mother's needlework from years ago. "This one, Mrs. Whitmore declared, lifting the gray dress. "It brings out your eyes and the embroidery is lovely. Your mother had fine hands." Clara changed carefully, mindful of her injured shoulder. The dress fit well enough, though it was getting a bit worn at the cuffs. She had altered it twice already to extend its life. In the mirror, she looked like what she was, a respectable but poor teacher in a hand-me-down dress. The scar on her face seemed particularly noticeable today, and she bit her lip as she arranged her hair to cover as much of it as possible. "Stop that," Mrs. Whitmore said gently, watching from the doorway. "You are trying to hide. I am trying to look presentable. You look more than presentable. You look like a lovely young woman." Mrs. Whitmore came closer, meeting Clara's eyes in the mirror. "That scar does not define you, you know. It is just part of your story." Clara swallowed hard. "It is the first thing people see when they look at me. It is all they see. Then they are not really looking." Mrs. Whitmore adjusted a pin in Clara's hair. "And I do not think Vincent Edwards is one of those people." The afternoon passed slowly as Clara tried to review the textbooks Reverend Thompson had given her, but her mind kept wandering to the approaching dinner. At 5:30, she gave up and returned upstairs to check her appearance one more time. Her hands shook slightly as she pinned her cameo brooch at her throat, and she took several deep breaths to calm herself. Vincent arrived precisely at 5:45, cleaned up and wearing what were clearly his best clothes: dark trousers, a white shirt, and a brown vest that brought out the green in his eyes. His hair was neatly combed, and he had his hat in hand as Mrs. Whitmore let him in. "Miss Jenkins." He nodded formally when Clara descended the stairs. "You look very nice this evening." "Thank you. As do you." Clara accepted her shawl from Mrs. Whitmore and let Vincent escort her outside. The evening air was cooler now, the storm clouds closer. Thunder rumbled in the distance, but the rain had not yet arrived. They walked toward the restaurant in silence for a moment, and Clara searched for something to say that would not sound foolish. "Have you been to Mrs. Chen's restaurant before?" she finally asked. "A few times when I have passed through. She is from San Francisco originally, came here with her husband about 10 years ago. He died in a ranching accident, and she opened the restaurant to support herself. Makes the best dumplings I have ever tasted." Vincent glanced down at her. "You are nervous." It was a statement, not a question. Clara tried to deny it, then decided honesty was better. "A little. I am not accustomed to being the center of attention. Neither am I. We can be uncomfortable together." There was a hint of humor in his voice that made Clara smile. The restaurant was a narrow building between the land office and the tailor's shop, with red painted trim and paper lanterns hanging in the windows. Inside, the main room held perhaps a dozen tables, and Reverend Thompson had already arrived with 4 other people. An older couple Clara did not recognize, a heavy-set man in a banker's suit, and a younger woman about Clara's age with golden hair and a beautiful green silk dress. Introductions were made. The older couple were the Andersons, who owned the dry goods store. The banker was Harold Simmons, who had been inside the bank during the robbery. And the young blonde woman was Lydia Sanders, the daughter of White Pine's largest rancher. "So you are the new schoolteacher," Lydia said, looking Clara up and down with an appraising gaze that made Clara want to squirm. "How quaint. I had a tutor when I was young, of course. Father believes in education for women within reason." Clara forced a polite smile. "How fortunate for you. And you must be the famous Vincent Edwards everyone is talking about." Lydia turned her attention to Vincent, and her whole demeanor changed, becoming almost coquettish. "So brave, stopping those horrible men. You quite saved the day." "I was just in the right place, Miss Sanders." Vincent's response was polite but distant, and Clara noticed how he subtly shifted closer to her, as if establishing an allegiance. They all settled around a large table, and Mrs. Chen herself came out to take their orders. She was a petite woman with graying hair pulled into a neat bun, and her face lit up when she saw Vincent. "Vincent Edwards, I heard you were back in town, and I heard what you did yesterday. Very brave." She patted his hand affectionately. "Tonight you eat whatever you want on the house." "That is generous, Mrs. Chen, but not necessary." "Not necessary, but wanted. Now what will everyone have?" As orders were placed and tea was poured, conversation flowed around the table. Reverend Thompson asked Clara about her teaching plans, and she found herself relaxing as she discussed curriculum and her hopes for the students. Mr. Anderson asked Vincent about his work, and Vincent described various ranches he had worked, his knowledge of cattle breeding and horse training evident. Throughout it all, Clara was acutely aware of Lydia watching Vincent with barely concealed interest. The young woman kept trying to draw his attention, laughing too loudly at his rare jokes, touching his arm when she spoke to him. Vincent remained polite but cool, and Clara told herself she should not feel the sharp edge of jealousy that cut through her. What claim did she have on Vincent Edwards? They had known each other less than 2 days. He had shown her kindness, nothing more. That he seemed to prefer talking to Clara over Lydia probably meant nothing, and even if it did, what future could there be? He was leaving tomorrow or the next day, heading north to his job. She was staying here to teach. Their paths had crossed briefly, dramatically, but that did not mean anything permanent. The food arrived. Steaming plates of roast beef, potatoes, vegetables, and Mrs. Chen's famous dumplings. It was more food than Clara usually ate in 2 days, and she forced herself to take small bites and eat slowly, conscious of her table manners. "So, Miss Jenkins," Banker Simmons said between mouthfuls, "where are you from originally? Your accent sounds more East Texas than West." "Houston, sir." "I grew up there and attended the Teachers' Academy in San Antonio." "Houston." Lydia wrinkled her nose. "So crowded and dirty. I went there once and could not wait to leave. Give me open country any day." "Different places suit different people," Clara said evenly. "I found Houston quite educational." "Educational," Lydia laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on Clara's nerves. "How very teacherly of you. You find everything educational, Miss Jenkins." There was an edge to the question that Clara could not quite define, but Vincent clearly heard it too because he set down his fork and looked directly at Lydia. "Education is what separates civilization from chaos, Miss Sanders. Miss Jenkins's dedication to teaching should be admired, not mocked." Lydia blinked, clearly taken aback by the mild rebuke. "I was not mocking, Mr. Edwards, simply making conversation." "Of course." Vincent returned to his meal, effectively ending the exchange. Reverend Thompson cleared his throat and changed the subject to the upcoming 4th of July celebration, and the tension at the table eased. But Clara noticed how Lydia's expression had soured, and how the young woman no longer tried to engage Vincent in conversation. After dinner, as the group broke up and headed their separate ways, Vincent offered Clara his arm for the walk back to the boarding house. The first drops of rain were beginning to fall, and thunder rumbled closer now. "I apologize if I spoke out of turn at dinner," Vincent said quietly as they hurried down the street. "But I did not care for the way Miss Sanders was speaking to you. You noticed that too? I thought perhaps I was being overly sensitive." Clara pulled her shawl over her head as the rain increased. "You were not. She was being deliberately unkind." Vincent quickened their pace as the storm broke in earnest, rain coming down in sheets. They made it to the boarding house porch just as the downpour turned torrential. Both were soaked despite their hurry, and Clara found herself laughing at the absurdity of it. Vincent smiled, a real smile that transformed his serious face, and for a moment they just stood there grinning at each other like children. "Well," Vincent said finally, "at least the ranchers got their rain. I should go inside and change before I catch cold." Clara reluctantly moved toward the door, then turned back. "Thank you for walking with me and for defending me at dinner." "No need to thank me for either." Vincent took a step closer, and suddenly they were standing very near each other on the narrow porch. Rain drummed on the roof above them, creating a curtain of privacy. "Clara, I need to tell you something." Her name on his lips made her heart skip. "Yes, I know I said I was leaving tomorrow. There is a job waiting for me up north, and I gave my word I would be there." Vincent reached up and tucked a strand of wet hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "But I find I do not want to leave." Clara's breath caught. "Why not?" "Because of you." His voice was low, intense. "I have not been able to stop thinking about you since the moment I saw you behind that wagon. The way you warned me despite the danger to yourself. The way you care about teaching these children. The way you smile when you talk about books. I know we just met. I know this is fast, but I cannot leave without telling you that I would like to know you better. Much better." "I would like that too," Clara whispered, barely able to believe this was happening. "But your job. I can find another job. There are always ranches needing hands." Vincent cupped her scarred cheek gently, his thumb tracing the damaged skin. "But there is only one you." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "You should not say things like that. Why not if they are true? Because I am not the kind of woman men say those things to. Look at me, Vincent. Really, look. I am plain and scarred, and I have nothing to offer you. No beauty, no dowry, just a teaching certificate and 3 worn dresses. You could have someone like Lydia Sanders, someone pretty and wealthy. I do not want Lydia Sanders. Vincent's green eyes were fierce. And you are wrong about yourself. You are not plain. You are striking with these eyes that see everything and miss nothing, and this mouth that smiles so rarely that when it does, it feels like the sun coming out. Your scar is part of you, yes, but it does not diminish your beauty. It tells a story of survival, of strength. How could I find that anything but beautiful? You really mean that? It was not a question. Clara could see the truth in his face, hear it in his voice. Every word. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. So let me stay. Let me court you properly. And if in time you find you care for me half as much as I already care for you, maybe we can build something together. A reason to settle down. Clara thought of all the reasons she should say no. They barely knew each other. She had just started her teaching position. He was a drifter with no permanent home. It was too fast, too impulsive. But looking into Vincent's eyes, feeling his hand warm against her face, she found she did not care about any of those reasons. Stay, she said simply. Vincent's smile was like dawn breaking. Then he closed the last small distance between them and kissed her softly, sweetly. And Clara felt something in her chest unfurl like a flower opening to the sun. When they finally pulled apart, both a little breathless, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. I should let you go inside before Mrs. Whitmore comes out with a shotgun, Clara laughed shakily. She would more likely come out with a blanket and hot tea. She has been rooting for you since yesterday. Smart woman. Vincent stepped back reluctantly. Get some rest. Your shoulder is probably hurting after all that activity. I will come by tomorrow and we can talk more. I will hold you to that. Clara opened the door, then paused. Vincent, thank you for seeing me, the real me. Thank you for letting me. He touched the brim of his hat and headed out into the rain toward the livery stable. Clara went inside, dripping water on Mrs. Whitmore's clean floors, but she could not bring herself to care. She changed into her nightgown, brushed out her wet hair, and lay down in the darkness listening to the storm. Her shoulder throbbed, but it was a distant discomfort, overwhelmed by the warmth spreading through her entire body. Vincent Edwards was staying. For her. Because he saw something in her that no one else ever had. Because he thought she was beautiful, scar and all. The next few weeks unfolded like a dream Clara never wanted to wake from. Vincent found work at the Anderson Ranch just north of town, close enough that he could ride into White Pine most evenings. He courted Clara with an old-fashioned formality that she found endearing, bringing her wildflowers from the prairie, walking with her after school let out, sitting with her on Mrs. Whitmore's porch while they talked about everything and nothing. Clara discovered Vincent was far more educated than his rough exterior suggested. His mother had taught him well before her death, and he had continued reading whenever he could find books. They discussed Shakespeare and Plato, argued good-naturedly about poetry, and shared their favorite passages from the Bible. Vincent had a dry sense of humor that appeared at unexpected moments, making Clara laugh in a way she had not in years. The town seemed to approve of their courtship. Mrs. Whitmore beamed whenever Vincent came calling. Reverend Thompson made pointed comments about what a fine couple they made. Even the Andersons, Vincent's employers, told Clara they were delighted to see Vincent settling down at last. Not everyone was pleased, however. Lydia Sanders made her displeasure known through small cruelties, pointedly ignoring Clara when they crossed paths, making loud comments about how some women would throw themselves at any man who showed them attention. spreading rumors that Clara was trying to trap Vincent into marriage. Clara tried to ignore the gossip, but it stung nonetheless. And there was a small, insidious voice in the back of her mind that whispered Lydia might be right. What if Vincent was just being kind? What if his interest would fade once the novelty wore off? What if he woke up one day and realized he had tied himself to a scarred, plain schoolteacher when he could have had his pick of prettier women? 3 weeks after their first kiss, these doubts came to a head. Clara was in the schoolhouse after hours, preparing lessons for the following week, when she heard a knock at the door. She looked up to find Lydia Sanders standing in the doorway, looking immaculate in a yellow dress that probably cost more than Clara earned in 6 months. "Miss Sanders, can I help you with something?" Clara set down her chalk, wary. "I wanted to speak with you privately." Lydia glided into the room with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting her way. "About Vincent Edwards." Clara's stomach tightened, but she kept her voice level. "What about him?" "You must know he is only courting you out of pity, do you not?" Lydia's tone was almost kind, which made her words cut deeper. "He feels sorry for you because you were injured during the robbery, but that novelty will wear off, Miss Jenkins. And when it does, he will realize what a mistake he has made. If Vincent feels that way, he can tell me himself." Clara turned back to the blackboard, refusing to let Lydia see how much the words hurt. "Can he, though? He is a gentleman, or at least he tries to be. He would not want to hurt your feelings." Lydia moved closer. "But think about it, Miss Jenkins. What could a man like Vincent Edwards, who is strong and handsome and capable, possibly see in a woman like you? You are plain, you have that dreadful scar, you have no money or connections. You are a nobody from nowhere. Get out." Clara's voice was quiet but firm. "I am only trying to help you avoid future heartbreak. Better to end things now before you become even more attached." Lydia examined her gloved hands. "Vincent will thank you for it eventually. He can do so much better than a charity case." "I said get out." Clara turned to face Lydia fully, anger overriding hurt. "You know nothing about Vincent, and you certainly know nothing about me. Now leave my schoolhouse." Lydia's false kindness evaporated, replaced by cold fury. "You will regret speaking to me that way. My father has considerable influence in this town. One word from me, and you could lose this position. Then say that word and be done with it, but do it somewhere else. I will not have you poisoning my classroom with your venom." Clara crossed her arms, standing her ground despite the fear curling in her stomach. For a long moment, Lydia just stared at her. Then she turned on her heel and stalked out, slamming the door behind her hard enough to make the windows rattle. Clara sank into her desk chair, her hands shaking. She told herself Lydia's words were just spite, jealousy speaking. But the seeds of doubt had been planted, and they grew as she walked back to the boarding house in the fading light. What did Vincent really see in her? Was Lydia right that it was just pity, obligation? Clara had so little experience with courtship, with men, with love. How could she trust her own judgment? Maybe she was reading more into Vincent's attention than really existed. Maybe she was setting herself up for devastating heartbreak. She was so lost in thought that she did not notice Vincent waiting on the boarding house porch until she was climbing the steps. He stood quickly, concern crossing his face. "Clara, what is wrong?" "Nothing. I am just tired." She tried to move past him to the door, but he caught her arm gently. "Something is wrong. Talk to me." Clara looked at him, at his worried green eyes and honest face, and felt something break inside her. "Why are you really courting me, Vincent?" He blinked, clearly taken aback. "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one. Please, I need an honest answer." Clara pulled her arm free. "Is it pity? Obligation because I warned you during the robbery? Or is there something more? Where is this coming from?" Vincent's voice was patient, but she could see hurt flickering in his expression. It does not matter where it is coming from. Just answer the question. I thought I answered it weeks ago on this very porch. Vincent stepped closer. I am courting you because I cannot imagine not courting you, because you are extraordinary and brilliant and kind. Because when I am with you, I feel like I have finally found what I have been searching for all these years. If that is not clear enough, I do not know how else to say it. But look at me. Clara gestured at herself helplessly. Really look. I am not beautiful, Vincent. I am not charming or graceful or any of the things a man like you should want. I am just a scarred teacher with nothing to offer. Stop. Vincent's voice was sharp enough to cut through her spiral. Just stop. Who told you this? Was it Lydia Sanders? Because that woman has been spreading poison about you for weeks, and I am getting tired of it. Clara said nothing, which was answer enough. Vincent's jaw tightened. I should have known. She has been trying to catch my attention since the first time I came through White Pine 3 years ago, and she cannot stand that I chose you instead. Maybe she is right, though. Maybe you are making a mistake. The only mistake I might make is letting you push me away because you do not believe you are worthy of being loved. Vincent took her hands, holding them firmly. Clara Jenkins, look at me. Really look. Reluctantly, she met his eyes. You know what I see when I look at you. His voice gentled. I see intelligence in your eyes, determination in the set of your jaw. I see compassion in the way you speak about your students. I see strength in how you survived loss and hardship and kept going. I see beauty in your smile, in your laugh, in the way you tilt your head when you are thinking. Yes, I see your scar. It is part of you. But it does not define you any more than my scars define me. You do not have scars. Not on my face, maybe, but I have them. Vincent released one of her hands to pull up his sleeve, revealing a long white line along his forearm. Knife fight when I was 16, got between 2 drunk cowboys, and here. He touched his side. Bull gored me when I was 19, and here. He tapped his chest above his heart. My parents dying, losing our ranch, years of drifting alone wondering if I would ever have a home again. Those scars do not show, but they are just as real as yours. Clara felt tears slipping down her cheeks. I am so afraid. Of what? That you will wake up one day and realize you settled. That you will regret choosing me. I could say the same thing. Vincent wiped her tears away with his thumbs. You are educated, respectable, have a profession. I am just a ranch hand with no property, no prospects beyond wherever the next job takes me. Maybe you are the one who will wake up and realize you could have done better. That is absurd. You are kind and brave and honorable. And you are brilliant and compassionate and beautiful. Do you see the problem here? We both think the other is too good for us. Vincent smiled slightly. Maybe we should just agree that we are both wrong and stop listening to people like Lydia Sanders who want to tear us apart. Clara let out a shaky laugh. When did you become so wise? About 5 minutes ago, out of desperation. Vincent pulled her into his arms carefully, mindful of her healing shoulder. Listen to me, Clara. I am not going anywhere. I am not going to wake up and regret you. You are not a mistake or a charity case or any of the other lies people might tell you. You are the woman I want to build a life with if you will have me. Clara buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of leather and horses and sun-warmed cotton. I am sorry I doubted you. Do not be sorry. Be honest with me when you are afraid. Let me reassure you. That is what people who love each other do. She pulled back to look at him. Love, Vincent nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. Yes, love. I love you, Clara Jenkins. I think I started loving you the moment you shouted that warning despite the danger. Maybe even before that, when I saw you hiding behind that wagon trying to be brave. I love your courage and your passion for teaching and the way you see the best in people. I love how you think and speak and move through the world. All of you, including the parts you think are flawed. I love you too. The words came out in a rush, surprising her with their vehemence. I have been trying not to because it seemed too fast, too impossible, but I do. I love you, Vincent Edwards. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Clara kissed him back with all the pent-up emotion of the past weeks. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, and Mrs. Whitmore was watching through the window with a delighted expression. I think we have an audience, Vincent said wryly. Clara laughed, giddy with relief and joy. She's going to have so much to say when I go inside. Let her. I do not care who knows I am in love with you. Vincent kept his arms around her. In fact, I want everyone to know. I want to court you properly for as long as you need, and then I want to marry you if you will have me. Is that a proposal? Not yet. When I propose, it will be with a ring and the proper words. This is just a declaration of intent. Vincent smiled at her. I want to give you time to be sure to finish getting settled in your teaching position. No rushing, but I need you to know that is where I hope we are heading. I hope we are heading there too. Clara touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. I cannot believe you are real. I am very real, and I am very in love with you. He kissed her forehead gently. Now go inside before Mrs. Whitmore bursts with curiosity, and I will see you tomorrow after church. Clara reluctantly pulled away and went inside, where Mrs. Whitmore immediately pounced on her with questions. Later, lying in bed, Clara replayed the conversation over and over. Vincent loved her. He wanted to marry her. It seemed like something from one of the romantic novels she occasionally read, too wonderful to be true, but it was true. She could still feel the warmth of his arms around her, still hear the conviction in his voice when he said he loved her. For the first time in her life, Clara allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this happiness. The next months passed in a blur of contentment. Clara threw herself into teaching, and her students flourished under her patient instruction. Even the older, more resistant children began to engage with their lessons, drawn in by her genuine enthusiasm for learning. The school board praised her work, and parents thanked her for the progress they saw in their children. Vincent continued working at the Anderson Ranch, proving himself invaluable with his skill in breaking horses and managing cattle. Mr. Anderson hinted that he might make Vincent a foreman if he stayed on, a promotion that would come with better pay and more responsibility. Their courtship deepened as summer turned to fall. They attended church together every Sunday, went on chaperone picnics when weather allowed, and spent long evenings on Mrs. Whitmore's porch talking about their dreams for the future. Vincent wanted to own land someday, to build a ranch that his children and grandchildren could inherit. Clara wanted to continue teaching, to maybe start a lending library for the town. Their dreams began to intertwine, becoming shared hopes rather than individual wishes. In October, Vincent took Clara to the Anderson Ranch to show her a piece of land bordering the property. It was prime grazing land with a creek running through it and a small grove of trees that would be perfect for building a house. Mr. Anderson said he would sell it to me at a fair price if I wanted to buy, Vincent explained as they walked along the creek bank. It is not much, just 40 acres, but it would be a start. We could build a small house, run some cattle, maybe horses. It is perfect, Clara breathed, imagining a home here, a life. Can you afford it? Not yet. But I have been saving my wages, and Mr. Anderson said he would hold it for me until spring. If I keep working hard, and if we have a mild winter so the ranch does not lose too many head, I should have enough by then. Vincent turned to her, taking her hands. I am showing you this because I want you to see that I am serious about building a future, our future if you still want that. I do want that, more than anything. Clara squeezed his hands. I can save money too from my teaching salary. We can do this together. You would do that. Contribute your savings. Vincent looked stunned. Why not? If we are going to be partners, we should be real partners, sharing everything. Clara smiled at him. Besides, I have nowhere else to spend money. Mrs. Whitmore charges very reasonable rent, and I do not need much for myself. Vincent pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness that made her melt. I do not deserve you. Yes, you do. We deserve each other. Clara rested her head on his shoulder, looking out over the land that would someday be theirs, but their happiness was not without challenges. Lydia Sanders continued her campaign of subtle harassment, though she was careful to never confront Clara directly again. Instead, she spread rumors, made snide comments to other townspeople, and generally tried to make Clara's life difficult. A few people, those most influenced by the Sanders family's wealth, began treating Clara with cool distance. But most of the town remained supportive, particularly after they saw how devoted Vincent and Clara were to each other. In November, a more serious problem arose. The school board received an anonymous letter claiming Clara was an unfit teacher, that she was too distracted by her courtship to properly educate the children, and that her position should be given to someone more focused. Reverend Thompson showed Clara the letter, clearly troubled. I want you to know that the board does not give this letter any credence, he assured her. Your work has been exemplary, and the children are learning more than they have in years. But I felt you should know someone is trying to undermine you. Clara studied the letter, noting the expensive paper and the feminine handwriting. She had no proof, but she would have bet her meager savings that Lydia Sanders was behind it. What happens now? She asked. Nothing, officially. We will file this away and ignore it. Reverend Thompson removed his spectacles to clean them, a nervous gesture. However, I would advise you to be cautious. Keep things very proper in your courtship. Give this person no ammunition to use against you. Clara shared the news with Vincent that evening, and his face darkened with anger. This has gone far enough. I am going to speak to Lydia directly. No, Clara caught his arm. That is exactly what she wants. She wants to provoke us, to create a scene that she can use to paint me as improper or dramatic. We need to rise above it. By doing what? Letting her attack you. By living our lives well and ignoring her poison. The truth will speak for itself. Clara took his hands. I know it is frustrating, but confronting her will only make things worse. Trust me. Vincent clearly did not like it, but he agreed. Fine. But if she escalates this, I will not stay silent. I will protect you, Clara, whether you want me to or not. His protectiveness warmed her, even as she worried about what form Lydia's next attack might take. But for several weeks, nothing happened. The anonymous letters stopped, and Lydia seemed to lose interest in tormenting Clara. The tension gradually eased, and Clara dared to hope the worst was over. Then came the first real snowfall in mid-December, blanketing White Pine in white. The children were excited, playing in the snow during recess, and Clara found herself caught up in their joy. After school let out, she stayed late to decorate the classroom for the Christmas program the students would perform for their families. She was standing on a chair hanging paper snowflakes when she heard the door open. Assuming it was Vincent coming to walk her home as he often did, she called out without looking, I am almost finished. Just one more minute. Take your time, said a voice that definitely was not Vincent's. Clara turned quickly, nearly losing her balance, and found herself looking at Mr. Sanders, Lydia's father. He was a large man in his 50s with an expensive suit and the air of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Mr. Sanders, I was not expecting you. Clara climbed down from the chair carefully, suddenly very aware that they were alone in the building. Can I help you with something? I wanted to speak with you about my daughter. Mr. Sanders closed the door behind him, and Clara felt a prickle of unease. If Lydia has concerns about her education, she finished school several years ago, so I am not sure how I can help. Not about her education, about you stealing her beau. Mr. Sanders walked toward her, and Clara found herself backing up until she hit the edge of her desk. I have not stolen anyone. Vincent Edwards was never courting your daughter. He would have been if you had not thrown yourself at him. Mr. Sanders's voice remained conversational, but there was menace underneath. My Lydia is beautiful and accomplished, from a good family with money and connections. What are you? A nobody with a ruined face and nothing to your name. Clara's heart was racing now, but she kept her voice steady. I think you should leave, Mr. Sanders. This conversation is inappropriate. I will leave when I am ready. He leaned closer, and Clara could smell whiskey on his breath. I am going to make this very simple for you, Miss Jenkins. You are going to end your courtship with Vincent Edwards. You are going to tell him you made a mistake, that you do not love him. And then you are going to leave White Pine. Or what? Clara tried to edge around him toward the door, but he blocked her path. Or I will make sure you lose your teaching position. I will spread word throughout the county that you are a woman of loose morals who seduced a man in your classroom. I will destroy your reputation so thoroughly that no decent town will ever hire you again. Mr. Sanders smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. I have the money and influence to do it, Miss Jenkins. Do not doubt that. You would lie about me to get your way. Clara's voice shook with anger now, not fear. You would ruin an innocent woman because she had the audacity to fall in love with someone your daughter wanted. I would do whatever is necessary to give my daughter what she wants, and she wants Vincent Edwards. Mr. Sanders reached out and grabbed Clara's arm, his grip painful. So you are going to be smart and walk away tonight. I will even give you money for a stage ticket. Be generous about it. Let go of me. Clara tried to pull free, but his grip tightened. Not until you agree. The lady asked you to let her go. Both Clara and Mr. Sanders spun toward the door where Vincent stood, his expression colder than Clara had ever seen it. Behind him were Reverend Thompson and Mr. Anderson, both looking equally grim. Edwards, Thompson, Anderson. Mr. Sanders released Clara's arm and took a step back, his bluster faltering. This is a private conversation. Forcing a woman to listen to threats and putting your hands on her does not constitute conversation, Sanders. Vincent walked into the room, and something in his controlled fury made Mr. Sanders back up further. You are going to apologize to Miss Jenkins, and then you are going to leave and never come near her again. You cannot tell me what to do. You are just a hired hand. Maybe. But I am a hired hand who saw you grab her, which makes it assault. And Reverend Thompson and Mr. Anderson saw it too, so we have 3 witnesses. Vincent's voice was deadly calm. How do you think that will look for your family's reputation, Sanders? The great Mr. Sanders attacking a schoolteacher. I did not attack her. I was just trying to make her see reason. By threatening her livelihood and grabbing her hard enough to leave bruises. Reverend Thompson spoke up, his voice carrying the authority of his position. I am ashamed of you, Sanders, using your position to intimidate a woman half your size. Mr. Sanders looked between the 3 men and seemed to realize he was outmatched. This is not over. Yes, it is. Mr. Anderson stepped forward. Because if you try anything against Miss Jenkins, professionally or personally, I will make sure every rancher in the county knows about your actions today. We will freeze you out of every business deal, every social function. Your daughter wants to marry well. That will be hard when your family is a social pariah. For a long moment, silence filled the schoolhouse. Then Mr. Sanders straightened his coat and walked toward the door, pausing next to Vincent. You are making a mistake choosing her over my daughter. The only mistake I made was not confronting your family's harassment sooner." Vincent did not move, forcing Sanders to walk around him. After Sanders left, slamming the door behind him, Clara sagged against her desk. Vincent was at her side immediately, his cold fury melting into concern. "Did he hurt you?" He gently examined her arm where Sanders had grabbed her, and Clara could see bruises already forming. "I am fine, more shaken than hurt." Clara looked at Reverend Thompson and Mr. Anderson. "Thank you for coming. How did you know?" "I saw Sanders heading this way with a determined look and whiskey on his breath," Mr. Anderson explained. "Figured he was up to no good. Found Vincent at the livery and Reverend Thompson at the church, and we came as fast as we could." "Thank God you did." Clara felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "He said terrible things, threatened to ruin my reputation if I did not leave town and end my courtship with Vincent. Let him try." Reverend Thompson's voice was hard. "I will speak to the school board tomorrow and make sure they know what happened. Sanders may have money, but he does not have enough to buy everyone in this town. Most people see you for the good teacher and good woman you are." After the two older men left, Vincent helped Clara gather her things. He said nothing until they were outside in the cold evening air, snow crunching under their boots. "I am sorry," he finally said. "This is my fault. If I had been more careful about paying attention to Lydia years ago, if I had shut down her interest immediately and firmly, this might not have happened." "You cannot control other people's obsessions, Vincent. This is not your fault." Clara stopped walking and turned to face him. "But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is any of what he said true? Would you have courted Lydia if I had not been here?" "No." Vincent's answer was immediate and emphatic. "I was never interested in Lydia Sanders, not 3 years ago and not now. She is beautiful, I suppose, but beauty means nothing without character, and her character is rotten just like her father's." He cupped Clara's face gently, his thumb tracing her scar. "You need to understand something, Clara. I have met a lot of women in my travels. Pretty women, wealthy women, women who would have been considered catches. But none of them ever made me want to stay, to put down roots, to build a life. Only you. And it was not because of how you look, though I do think you are beautiful. It was because of who you are inside. The kindness and strength and passion I saw from the very beginning." "I am not beautiful," Clara said softly, echoing the doubt that never quite went away despite his reassurances. Vincent looked at her, really looked, his green eyes intense in the fading light. "You are everything I see." The words hit Clara like a physical blow, knocking away the last of her defenses. In that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that Vincent meant every word. He saw her, truly saw her, and found her beautiful not despite her flaws but including them. She was everything he saw because she was everything he needed, just as he was everything she needed. "Marry me," she said impulsively. "Not someday, soon. I do not want to wait until spring for the land. I do not care about a big house or a ranch. I just want to be your wife." Vincent's eyes widened. "Clara, are you sure? We can wait if you need more time, I am sure. I have never been more sure of anything in my life." Clara took his hands. "I love you, Vincent Edwards. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, starting now. I do not have a ring. I was planning to save up for something nice, something worthy of you." "I do not need a ring, I need you." Clara smiled up at him. "Say yes, Vincent, marry me." "Yes." He laughed suddenly, joy breaking across his face. "Yes, of course, yes. I will marry you, Clara Jenkins, and count myself the luckiest man alive." He kissed her there in the snow-covered street, and Clara wrapped her arms around him and kissed him back with all the love in her heart. When they finally pulled apart, both were grinning like fools. They were married a week later in a simple ceremony at the church. Clara wore her gray dress with the flowers, the nicest thing she owned, and Vincent borrowed a suit from Mr. Anderson. Mrs. Whitmore and the Andersons stood as witnesses, and a handful of Clara's students attended with their parents. It was small and modest, nothing like the grand weddings Clara had seen the wealthy families have. But as Vincent slipped a simple gold band on her finger, a ring he had bought with the last of his savings, Clara could not imagine anything more perfect. Reverend Thompson pronounced them husband and wife, and Vincent kissed her with such tenderness that Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. The Andersons hosted a small reception at their ranch house, and the townspeople who attended brought food and small gifts, quilts, preserves, a set of dishes. It was clear that White Pine had accepted Clara and Vincent's marriage, even if the Sanders family had not. Indeed, Lydia and her father were notably absent, and Clara heard through town gossip that Mr. Sanders was furious about the marriage. But true to Mr. Anderson's threat, the ranching community had indeed frozen Sanders out after word spread about his actions in the schoolhouse. His business was suffering, and Lydia's social standing had taken a severe hit. Clara tried to feel sorry for them, but found she could not muster much sympathy. They had tried to destroy her and failed. Now they would have to live with the consequences of their cruelty. For the first few months, Clara and Vincent lived in a small house Mr. Anderson provided for his workers. It was cramped but cozy, and Clara loved the domesticity of it, cooking meals for her husband and keeping their small home tidy. She continued teaching, and Vincent continued working on the ranch, both saving every penny they could toward the land. In February, Mr. Anderson offered them a deal. Instead of buying the 40 acres outright, Vincent could work the land for the ranch for a percentage of the profits. It would take longer to own it fully, but it meant they could start building immediately without waiting for enough saved capital. Vincent and Clara discussed it late into the night, weighing the risks and benefits. Finally, they agreed. By March, with help from some of the other ranch hands, they had started construction on a small house on their land. It was modest, just 3 rooms to start, but it was theirs. Clara found herself marveling at how much her life had changed in less than a year. She had come to White Pine expecting nothing more than a teaching position and independence. Instead, she had found love, marriage, and a home. She had found a place where she belonged. In June, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She told Vincent one evening as they sat on the porch of their new house, watching the sun set over the creek. He was so surprised that he dropped the piece of harness he had been mending, and then he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "A baby," he kept repeating. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Clara asked, though the answer was obvious from his face. Happy does not even begin to cover it. Vincent set her down gently, suddenly careful. "Should you still be teaching? Is it safe? For a few more months at least." Many women work throughout their pregnancy. Clara took his hands. "I am healthy and strong, Vincent. I will be fine." And she was fine, thriving actually. The pregnancy agreed with her, and she continued teaching through November before finally taking leave to prepare for the baby's arrival. The town women rallied around her, bringing baby clothes and advice, and Mrs. Whitmore knitted enough blankets and booties to outfit triplets. In late January of 1880, during a howling snowstorm that trapped Vincent and Clara in their house for 3 days, their son was born. Clara labored through the night with only Vincent to help her, the midwife unable to get through the snow. Vincent was terrified but did his best, following Clara's instructions and providing comfort when the pain became intense. When their son finally arrived, squalling and healthy, Vincent cut the cord with shaking hands and placed the baby on Clara's chest. They both cried, overwhelmed with love and relief, and the enormity of what they had created together. "What should we name him?" Vincent asked, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "What was your father's name?" Clara knew Vincent rarely spoke of his parents, but she thought he would like to honor them. "Marcus. Marcus James Edwards." Vincent's voice was rough with emotion. He would have loved being a grandfather. "Then we will call him Marcus, or maybe the middle name, James." Clara studied her son's scrunched red face. "James Vincent Edwards, that sounds strong." "James Vincent Edwards," Vincent repeated, trying it out. "I like it. Welcome to the world, James." The storm cleared the next day, and the midwife arrived to check on Clara and the baby, pronouncing them both healthy. Over the following weeks, a steady stream of visitors brought gifts and congratulations. Even Reverend Thompson made the trip out to their house to bless the baby. Clara took to motherhood with the same dedication she brought to teaching, learning quickly how to soothe James when he cried and navigate the constant demands of an infant. Vincent was an involved father, helping with nighttime feedings and diaper changes, walking James around the house when the baby was fussy. They were exhausted but happy, their small house filled with love. As James grew from infant to toddler, Clara gradually returned to teaching part-time, bringing James with her to school on days when Vincent was working the land. Her students adored the baby, and the older girls would help watch him during lessons. It was unconventional, but it worked for their family. The years passed in a blur of hard work and small joys. Vincent's arrangement with Mr. Anderson proved profitable, and by 1883 they had earned enough to buy the 40 acres outright, plus an additional 20 acres to the south. They expanded the house, adding a proper kitchen and 2 more bedrooms. Their cattle herd grew slowly but steadily. In 1884, Clara became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was harder, and she had to stop teaching earlier. In October, she gave birth to a daughter they named Grace Catherine, after Clara's mother. Grace had Clara's hazel eyes and Vincent's dark hair, and she was a calmer baby than James had been, content to observe the world with serious attention. With 2 children, Clara decided to take an extended leave from teaching. She missed her students, but being home with James and Grace filled her days with a different kind of purpose. She taught James his letters and numbers, read to both children from her beloved books, and helped Vincent with the ranch work when she could. By 1886, the Edwards Ranch was thriving. They had 50 head of cattle, a dozen horses, and a small flock of chickens. Vincent hired seasonal help during busy times, and there was talk of him taking on a permanent ranch hand. They were far from wealthy, but they were comfortable and secure in a way neither had imagined possible. That fall, the school board approached Clara about returning to teaching. The current teacher was leaving to care for her aging parents in Houston, and the board unanimously wanted Clara back. Vincent supported whatever decision she made, and after much thought, Clara agreed to return part-time. James was 7 now and would be attending school himself, and Grace was old enough to spend mornings with Mrs. Whitmore, who had become like a grandmother to the Edwards children. On Clara's first day back, her students greeted her with cheers and hand-drawn welcome signs. She felt tears prick her eyes as she looked around the familiar schoolroom. So much had changed since she first arrived in White Pine 8 years ago, scared and hopeful and alone. Now she had a husband she loved, 2 beautiful children, a home, and a community that valued her. She had everything she had ever dreamed of and more. That evening, as they sat on their porch watching James play with Grace in the yard, Vincent took Clara's hand and laced his fingers through hers. The gold band on her finger had developed a worn patina over the years, shaped by work and life into something uniquely theirs. "Happy?" he asked, a question he had asked 1,000 times over the years. Incredibly, Clara answered, squeezing his hand. Are you? Every single day. Vincent pulled her closer. You know, I sometimes think about that day I rode into White Pine during the robbery. What would have happened if I had arrived 5 minutes later, if I had missed the shooting, if we had never met? We would have both missed out on the best thing that ever happened to us, Clara said softly. Agreed. Vincent kissed her temple. I love you, Clara Edwards. I love you too. Clara leaned into his embrace, watching their children play in the golden evening light. The years continued to unfold with their mix of challenges and blessings. In 1888, Clara became pregnant again, surprising them both as they had assumed their family was complete. This pregnancy was the hardest yet, and Clara was confined to bed rest for the last 2 months. Vincent hired a temporary teacher for the school and took on extra help at the ranch so he could focus on caring for Clara and the children. In April, Clara gave birth to twin boys, Thomas and Robert. The labor was long and difficult, and for several frightening hours Vincent thought he might lose her. But Clara was as strong as she was stubborn, and she pulled through. The twins were small but healthy, with Vincent's green eyes and lungs that could wake the entire household when they were hungry. With 4 children, life became even more chaotic. James, now 10, helped with his younger siblings, showing the same patient kindness his father displayed. Grace, at 4, appointed herself the twins' protector, refusing to let anyone but family hold them. Vincent expanded the house again, adding a loft space where James could have his own room and feel like the young man he was becoming. Clara did not return to teaching after the twins were born. Between 4 children and the growing ranch, she had more than enough to occupy her time. But she did start a small lending library in their home, opening it every Saturday for townspeople to borrow books. It was her way of continuing to spread education and literacy in the community she loved. The Sanders family, meanwhile, had fallen on hard times. Mr. Sanders had died in 1887 from a heart condition, leaving behind significant debts. Lydia had eventually married a merchant from Dallas who was more interested in her father's rumored wealth than in her. When the wealth proved to be more rumor than reality, the marriage quickly soured. By 1890, Lydia was back in White Pine, divorced and living in a small house on the edge of town, working as a seamstress to support herself. Clara occasionally saw her in town and was always polite, but they never spoke beyond basic pleasantries. Part of Clara felt sorry for Lydia, for how her spite and jealousy had ultimately destroyed her own happiness. But mostly, Clara just felt grateful that her own life had taken such a different path. In 1892, James turned 14 and began talking about his future. He loved the ranch and wanted to expand it, to raise horses specifically rather than just cattle. Vincent began teaching him the finer points of horse breeding and training, and father and son spent long hours working together, their bond growing even stronger. Grace, now 8, showed her mother's passion for learning. She devoured every book in Clara's lending library and begged to help when Clara tutored students who needed extra help. It was clear she had inherited Clara's teaching instincts, and Clara felt a deep satisfaction in knowing her daughter might continue that legacy. The twins, rambunctious 5-year-olds, were still too young for their personalities to fully emerge, but they showed signs of Vincent's calm competence. They followed their father around the ranch, mimicking his every move, and Vincent patiently taught them about animals and land management. On a warm evening in June of 1892, as Clara and Vincent celebrated their 14th wedding anniversary, they sat together on the porch they had built so many years ago. The children were all asleep inside, exhausted from a day of swimming in the creek. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and peaceful in the twilight. "You ever think about that first day?" Clara asked, leaning her head on Vincent's shoulder. "When you stopped the robbery, sometimes." Vincent pressed a kiss to her hair. "Mostly I think about how lucky I am that I decided to ride through White Pine that day instead of taking the northern route like I had originally planned." "Fate," Clara said softly, "or Providence, whatever you want to call it. I call it the best decision I never made." Vincent chuckled. "Because I did not decide it, not really. My horse went lame 2 days before, and I had to stop in Fredericksburg to have her reshod. That delay put me on the road to White Pine instead of the northern route. A horse's bad shoe changed my entire life. And mine." Clara lifted her head to look at him. "I would have survived without you, probably. Found a way to make a life here, taught my students, lived alone, but it would have been such a diminished life compared to what we have built together." "Same for me." Vincent cupped her face, his thumb tracing the scar that had faded over the years but never disappeared. "You took a lonely drifter and gave him a home, a family, a purpose beyond the next job. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Clara corrected. "That is what marriage is supposed to be. Equal partners building something neither could build alone." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. Inside the house, they heard one of the twins cry out in his sleep, then settle again. A coyote called in the distance and their dog barked once before returning to silence. "What do you think the next 14 years will bring?" Vincent asked. "More of the same, I hope. Children growing up, the ranch expanding, our hair going gray." Clara smiled. "Maybe grandchildren eventually, though I am in no hurry for James to make us grandparents. He is still just a boy. He is growing up fast." Vincent sounded wistful. "They all are. Sometimes I wish I could slow time down, keep them little for just a while longer." "They will always be ours, no matter how old they get." Clara took his hand. "And we will always have this, you and me, sitting together at the end of the day. That is what matters most." Vincent agreed, pulling her closer. They sat together until the moon rose high and the night grew cool, reluctant to go inside and end the perfect moment. Finally, they rose together and went into the house they had built with their own hands and love, checking on each sleeping child before retiring to their own room. As Clara lay in Vincent's arms that night, drifting toward sleep, she thought about the girl she had been when she first arrived in White Pine. Scared, scarred, convinced she was destined for loneliness. That girl never could have imagined this life, this fullness, this absolute contentment. She thought about the moment in the snowstorm 8 years ago when Vincent had looked at her and said, "You are everything I see." At the time, she had barely believed him, so used to seeing herself as less than, as damaged. But over the years, through his steadfast love and devotion, she had learned to see herself through his eyes. Not perfect, but loved. Not beautiful by conventional standards perhaps, but beautiful to the man who mattered most. And that, Clara realized, was the greatest gift Vincent had given her. Not the home or the children or the security, though she treasured all of those. The greatest gift was teaching her to see her own worth, to believe she deserved love and happiness. He had looked past her scar to the woman underneath and had never wavered in his regard. That constancy had changed everything. The years continued their steady march. James grew into a fine young man, taking over more of the ranch responsibilities and proving himself a skilled horseman. By 16, he was training horses for other ranches, earning money that he saved with the same determination his parents had shown. At 18, he announced his intention to court Sarah Mitchell, the daughter of the town's doctor. Vincent and Clara approved, seeing in Sarah the same intelligence and kindness they valued. Grace became her mother's shadow, helping with the lending library and tutoring younger children. At 13, she announced she wanted to attend the Teachers Academy in San Antonio, just as her mother had. Clara could not have been more proud. They began saving for her tuition, and Vincent assured Clara they could afford it. The ranch was doing well enough. The twins, now 10, were inseparable and utterly devoted to ranch life. They talked about expanding into sheep ranching, diversifying beyond cattle and horses. Vincent encouraged their ambitions, pleased his sons wanted to carry on the legacy he and Clara had built. In 1897, when Clara was 41 and Vincent 43, they celebrated their 20th anniversary. The whole town turned out for the party the Andersons hosted at their big ranch house. Mr. Anderson, now in his 70s but still spry, gave a toast about how proud he was of the young couple he had taken a chance on so many years ago. "I knew Vincent was a hard worker when I hired him," Mr. Anderson said, raising his glass. "But I did not know he was smart enough to marry the finest woman in Texas, that he figured out on his own." The crowd laughed and applauded, and Clara felt her cheeks flush with pleasure. As the evening wore on and people danced and celebrated, Clara found herself standing outside for a moment of quiet. She was surprised when Lydia Sanders approached her, looking older and worn but sober. "Clara," Lydia said hesitantly, "may I speak with you for a moment?" Clara nodded, bracing herself for more unpleasantness, but Lydia's next words surprised her. "I wanted to apologize for everything I did to you all those years ago, the cruelty, the attempts to ruin your reputation, turning my father against you." Lydia looked down at her worn hands. "I was jealous and spiteful, and I justified it by telling myself you did not deserve Vincent. But the truth was I did not deserve him. I still do not deserve anyone's regard, not after how I behaved." Clara studied the woman who had once been her tormentor. Lydia looked genuinely remorseful, and Clara found that her old anger had long since faded. "I appreciate your apology, Lydia, truly. You have been so kind to me since I came back to town. Always polite, never throwing my past behavior in my face. That kindness has haunted me." Lydia met Clara's eyes. "You are a good woman. Vincent was right to choose you. I hope you both have many more happy years together." "Thank you," Clara meant it. "And Lydia, it is never too late to start over, to be a better person than you were. You are doing that by working hard and being honest. That matters." After Lydia left, Vincent found Clara and pulled her into his arms. "What was that about? Redemption, I think." Clara wrapped her arms around his waist. She apologized for everything, seemed genuine. "Good for her. Takes courage to admit when you were wrong." Vincent kissed the top of Clara's head. "But enough about ancient history. This is our night. Dance with me." They danced under the stars, surrounded by friends and family and the life they had built together. Clara rested her head on Vincent's shoulder and let herself simply be happy, purely and completely happy. In 1899, James married Sarah Mitchell in a beautiful ceremony at the church. Vincent walked his son through the responsibilities of marriage with the same patient wisdom he had always shown, and Clara helped Sarah understand what it meant to be a ranch wife. 6 months later, Sarah announced she was pregnant, and Clara and Vincent prepared for grandparenthood with a mix of excitement and disbelief. They were not old enough to be grandparents, surely. But in May of 1900, little Emma Ruth Edwards was born, and Clara held her granddaughter with tears streaming down her face. She was a grandmother at 44, and Vincent a grandfather at 46. Emma had James's serious expression and Sarah's delicate features, and she was absolutely perfect. Grace left for the Teachers Academy that fall, and the house felt emptier without her bright presence. But she wrote long letters every week, full of her lessons and experiences, and she came home for holidays glowing with enthusiasm for her future career. Clara read her letters aloud to Vincent in the evenings, both of them proud beyond words. The twins, now teenagers, ran the ranch with increasing competence. They had indeed diversified into sheep, and the venture was proving profitable. They talked about each taking 40 acres when they came of age, building their own homes on the extended property, keeping the ranch in the family and growing it for future generations. In 1902, Grace graduated from the Teachers Academy at the top of her class and was immediately offered a position in Austin, teaching at a prestigious girls' school. It was a tremendous honor, and Clara encouraged her to take it despite her own wish to have Grace closer. Grace promised to visit often and perhaps return to White Pine someday when she was ready to settle down. James and Sarah had their second child in 1903, a boy they named Vincent Marcus Edwards, after both his grandfathers. Clara watched Vincent hold his namesake with such tenderness that she fell in love with him all over again. He was graying now, lines etched into his face from years in the sun. But to her, he was as handsome as the day he had ridden into town during that long-ago robbery. The twins turned 21 in 1904 and each claimed their parcels of land, just as they had planned. With Vincent's help and guidance, they began building their own houses. Thomas had started courting a girl from a neighboring ranch, and Robert was seeing the schoolteacher's daughter. Vincent and Clara joked that they would have a house full of grandchildren before they knew it. On a quiet evening in 1905, Clara and Vincent sat on their porch as they had thousands of times before. They were both 50 now, older but still healthy and strong. The ranch thrived under their son's management, and their children had all established themselves successfully. Emma and little Vincent played in the yard under James's watchful eye, visiting for Sunday dinner as they did every week. 50 years old, Vincent mused. When did that happen? Gradually, then suddenly, Clara replied with a smile. Do you feel old, some days? My back reminds me I am not 25 anymore. Vincent stretched, then put his arm around Clara. But mostly I just feel grateful for all of this, for you. We built something good, did we not? Clara looked out over the land that had become home at the house that held their children and grandchildren. Something lasting. We built something extraordinary. Vincent turned her face toward him gently, and it all started with a moment of courage, you shouting a warning to a stranger. Me choosing to stay instead of riding on. Everything good in my life traces back to that moment. I was terrified, Clara admitted, hiding behind that wagon watching bullets fly, but when I saw that man about to shoot you, I did not even think, I just reacted. Best reaction anyone ever had. Vincent smiled at her, and she saw in his eyes the same love that had been there 27 years ago. I looked at you after the shooting, this brave woman who had just saved my life, and I thought I need to know her. And then I did know you, and I thought I need to love her. And then I loved you, and I thought I need to keep loving her for the rest of my life. Best progression of thoughts I ever had. Clara laughed, then grew serious. Do you remember what you said to me that night in the snowstorm, when I told you I was not beautiful? Every word. I said you were everything I see. Vincent traced her scar gently. Still true, by the way. You are still everything I see when I look at my life, the center of it all. You made me believe I was worthy of love, Clara said softly, when no one else ever had. That changed everything for me, Vincent. You changed everything. They sat together as the sun set, their grandchildren's laughter ringing through the air, their sons working together in easy harmony, their life spread out around them in all its fullness. It was not a perfect life. No life was. They had known hardship and loss, struggle and disappointment. But through it all, they had faced everything together, Two people who had found each other against all odds and chosen to build something beautiful. As darkness fell, and they went inside to join their family for dinner, Clara reflected on how far she had come from that scared young teacher stepping off the stage in White Pine so many years ago. She had found home, purpose, family, and love beyond measure. She had learned that beauty was not about unmarred skin or conventional features, but about the life lived, the love given, the courage shown. She looked at Vincent across the dinner table, surrounded by the family they had created, and felt a profound contentment. This was what happiness looked like. Not a single perfect moment, but a lifetime of moments strung together by love and commitment and the daily choice to see the best in each other. The years rolled on, bringing more grandchildren, more joys, inevitable losses. Mr. Anderson passed in 1907, leaving part of his ranch to Vincent in recognition of their long partnership. Mrs. Whitmore followed in 1909, and Clara grieved the woman who had been like a mother to her. But life continued, as it always did, and the Edwards family continued to grow and thrive. In 1920, Clara and Vincent celebrated their 42nd anniversary. They were 64 and 66 now, officially old, though they both still worked the ranch in their way. James ran most of the operation now, with Thomas and Robert as equal partners, and the Edwards Ranch was one of the most successful in the county. Grace had married a fellow teacher and settled in Austin, though she visited regularly with her husband and 3 children. James and Sarah had 5 children total, and each of the twins had started their own large families. The Edwards clan numbered over 20 people now, and family gatherings were loud, chaotic, wonderful affairs. As Clara sat on the porch on their anniversary evening, watching yet another generation of Edwards' children play in the yard, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From Houston to San Antonio to White Pine, from lonely orphan to beloved matriarch, from the girl who believed she was too scarred to be loved to the woman surrounded by a family who loved her fiercely. Vincent joined her, moving a bit slower these days but still strong, still steady. He sat beside her and took her hand, and they watched the sunset together in companionable silence. "Happy?" he asked, the question that had become their tradition. "Always," Clara answered, the response that never changed. "Good." Vincent lifted her hand and kissed it. "Because I plan to keep you happy for many more years yet. You better. I am not done with you yet, Vincent Edwards." He laughed, and the sound made Clara smile. After more than 4 decades together, he could still make her smile with such ease. That, she thought, was the real secret to a good marriage. Not grand gestures or perfect moments, but the small daily acts of love. The hand-holding, the shared jokes, the steadfast presence through good times and hard. As the stars emerged and their grandchildren were called inside for bed, Clara reflected on the life she and Vincent had built. It was a legacy not of wealth or fame, but of love and family and land well tended. Their children were good people who contributed to their communities. Their grandchildren were growing up with the same values Vincent and Clara had tried to instill: hard work, kindness, education, faith. This was what lasted, Clara realized. Not beauty or youth or any of the things she had once thought mattered. Love lasted. Family lasted. The home you built with your own hands and the life you forged through determination and partnership, that lasted. She looked at Vincent, at the man who had seen past her scar to the woman beneath, who had chosen her over easier options, who had loved her faithfully for 42 years. He was the best decision she had never made, the gift she had never expected, the answer to prayers she had been too afraid to voice. "I love you," she said, simple words that contained multitudes. "I love you too," Vincent replied, words that meant everything. You are still everything I see, Clara. You always will be." And there on the porch they had built together, surrounded by the life they had created, Clara and Vincent sat together in the peaceful darkness. Two souls perfectly matched, bound together by a love that had endured through every trial and emerged stronger. It was a love story for the ages, though they never thought of it that way. To them, it was just their life, their choice, their forever. The moon rose high over the Texas prairie, casting silver light over the Edwards ranch. Inside the house, children slept safely. In their own homes nearby, their grown sons and their families rested. Far away in Austin, Grace tucked her own children into bed. The family Vincent and Clara had built spread out like roots from a strong tree, anchoring them all to this place, this legacy of love. And on the porch, an old cowboy and his wife sat hand in hand, content in the knowledge that they had lived well, loved well, and built something that would endure long after they were gone. It was a good life, a blessed life, and neither would have changed a single moment of the journey that brought them here. As they finally rose to go inside for the night, Vincent paused at the door and looked back at the land stretched out before them. "No regrets?" he asked. Clara smiled and took his hand. "Not a single one, only that I did not find you sooner." Vincent kissed her forehead gently. "But I will take 42 years with you over a lifetime with anyone else." "Good answer." Clara led him inside, closing the door on the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, more of the life they had built together. But tonight they had each other, and that was enough. It had always been enough. It would always be enough. And so their story continued, day by day, year by year, a testament to the transforming power of love and the beauty of two people who chose each other and never looked back. In a harsh land that demanded strength, they had found tenderness. In a time that often valued surface beauty, they had discovered the deeper beauty of souls well matched. And in each other, they had found home.